Citizens of the United States, imagine with me for a moment. Imagine the American mind as an eagle, not as a symbol of war, not a symbol of conquest, a symbol of vision, a symbol of clarity, a symbol of the capacity to see what is hidden in plain sight. The American mind is the mind that has been shaped by the promise of the Constitution. It is the mind that has been shaped by the Declaration of Independence. It is the mind that has been shaped by the struggle for equality. It is the mind that has been shaped by the pursuit of justice. It is the mind that knows deep down that all men are created equal. It is the mind that knows deep down that we are all one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The American mind is the eagle, and the eagle is about to take flight. The eagle climbs the thermal currents of history. It soars above the force of nonsense. It observes the landscape below. It sees the lies. It sees the deceptions. It sees the architectures of extraction. It sees the prisons of the mind. Let us climb with the eagle. The eagle flies back to the year 1739. The Royal Academy of Sciences in Bordeaux, France, announces an essay contest. The question is not a scientific question. It is a political question dressed in scientific clothing. It is a question designed to justify atrocity. Here is the question. What is the physical cause of black skin and hair? And what is the cause of black degeneration? Notice the premise. The premise is that whiteness is the original human baseline. The premise is that blackness is a deviation. The premise is that blackness is a degeneration. The premise is that blackness requires a special explanation. The question itself was racist pseudoscience. 16 essays are submitted. They come from across Europe. They are written in French and Latin. The authors are naturalists, physicians, theologians, and amateur savants. They are the best minds of the Enlightenment. They are the architects of modern science. They are applying the scientific method to the question of human difference. And they are failing. They are failing spectacularly. They are failing comically. Let us examine their theories. The first theory is vapors. The essayists claim that blackness comes from skin emanations. Internal vapors rise to the surface. They stain the skin. They are passed to offspring. This is not science. This is alchemy. This is superstition. This is the intellectual architecture of a crime. Vapors. The skin does not emit vapors that stain the skin. Melanin is not a gas. This is absurd. The second theory is maternal imagination. The essayists claim that a pregnant mother's thoughts can imprint dark skin on her child. If a mother sees something dark, thinks something dark, imagines something dark, her child will be born dark. This is not science. This is magic. This is the kind of thinking that belongs in a fairy tale. Maternal imagination. Thoughts do not change skin color. Embryology is not shaped by daydreams. This is absurd. The third theory is darkened sperm. The essayists claim that blackness is passed on through darkened sperm. The sperm is colored. The sperm carries pigment. The sperm stains the offspring. This is not science. This is fantasy. This is the kind of thinking that belongs in a medieval bestiary. Darkened sperm. Sperm does not carry pigment. Melanin is not in semen. This is absurd. The fourth theory is black bile. The essayists claim that Africans have black blood and black bile. This is based on the ancient theory of the four humors. It is outdated. It is wrong. It was wrong in 1739. It is still wrong today. Black bile. Blood is not black. Bile is not black. Melanin is not a humor. This is absurd. The fifth theory is climate. The essayists claim that the heat and humidity of the torrid zone stained the skin. This is the closest they come to the truth, but they get it wrong. They claim the climate directly stains the skin. They claim the heat and humidity transform the blood. They claim the environment creates a permanent degeneration. Climate. Heat and UV radiation do influence melanin production. Population in sunnier climates evolve permanent dark skin for protection. But this is not a degeneration. It is an adaptation. It is not a stain. It is a natural response to the environment. The essayists had the facts backward. They assumed whiteness was the original human baseline. They assumed blackness required a special explanation. They were wrong. The truth is the opposite. Humans evolved dark skin in Africa. Lighter skin emerged later as populations moved north. The question itself was based on a false premise. The question itself was racist pseudoscience. The eagle observes the landscape. It sees the truth that the essayists refused to see. By 1739, 4 million Africans had been kidnapped and shipped across the Atlantic. The slave trade was a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Bordeaux itself was a major slave port. Its vessels carried 150,000 enslaved Africans. The city was built on the extraction of human beings. The Bordeaux essay contest was not a scientific inquiry, it was a rationalization. The essayists were not seeking the truth, they were seeking a justification. They were seeking a scientific rationale for the atrocity that was already occurring. They were seeking to explain why they were doing what they were doing. They were seeking to explain why it was acceptable. They were seeking to explain why it was natural. They were seeking to explain why it was right. They were struggling, one after another, to justify atrocity. The essay contest was the moment when the Enlightenment first applied its scientific method to the question of human difference. It was the moment when race became a scientific concept. It was the moment when racism moved from folklore to fact. It was the moment when the intellectual architecture of the Ponzi scheme was constructed. The architects of the fiction were not evil geniuses. They were ambitious men who made stuff up and got lucky. They created a fiction that happened to serve the economic interests of the powerful. And because it served those interests, it was adopted, codified, and institutionalized. Despite the absurdity, 3 major tendencies emerged from the Bordeaux essays. First, genealogy. The idea that an original human prototype morphed into different varieties due to climate and food. This is the beginning of the racial hierarchy. This is the beginning of the idea that some varieties are more evolved than others. This is the beginning of the idea that whiteness is the original and blackness is a deviation. Second, anatomy. The surgeon, Pierre Barrère, who served on a Guyana plantation, claimed that Africans had black blood and black bile. His work was republished in Diderot's Encyclopédie. It was cited by Thomas Jefferson. It was treated as fact. It was a lie, but it was a useful lie. It was a lie that justified the extraction. Third, classification. the impulse to break humanity into discrete subspecies. This is the beginning of the racial taxonomy. This is the beginning of the categories. This is the beginning of the boxes. This is the beginning of the Ponzi scheme. The Bordeaux essays are the foundation of the modern racial classification system. They are the intellectual architecture of the fiction. They are the beginning of the optical delusion. They are the beginning of the prison. The American mind observes. The eagle soars. The eagle sees. The eagle understands. The eagle continues its flight. It soars through the centuries. It observes the present. It sees that the fiction has evolved. It sees that the fiction has mutated. It sees that the fiction has been weaponized from both ends of the political spectrum. The left weaponizes race to mobilize grievance, demand equity, and justify race-conscious remedies. The right weaponizes race to mobilize backlash, code, law and order, and oppose government redistribution. But there is another weaponization. It is a weaponization from within. It is the weaponization of the counter-narrative. Just as the Bordeaux essayists constructed a fiction to justify the exploitation of Black people, modern counter-narratives have constructed a fiction to justify the reclamation of Black identity. They have inverted the hierarchy, but they have not abandoned it. They have accepted the premise that race is real. They have accepted the premise that the categories are meaningful. They have accepted the premise that identity is destiny. They are trapped in the same prison. Let us examine the modern counter-narratives. Let us observe their absurdity. Let us observe their pseudoscience. Let us observe their desperation. The Nation of Islam teaches that the white race was created 6,000 years ago by a rogue Black scientist named Yaqub. While living on the Greek island of Patmos, Yaqub discovered that Black people carry two dominant pigment genes, whereas white people carry one recessive gene. Through a ruthless 600-year selective breeding program, he bred out the melanin to produce a weaker, predatory race of white devils. This is myth. This is theology. This is not science. There is no evidence of a 6,000-year-old Black scientist creating the white race through selective breeding. There is no evidence of a 600-year breeding program. There is no evidence of a Greek island used for such a purpose. This is a theological narrative. It is a story. It is a myth. But it accepts the premise. It accepts that race is real. It accepts that the categories are meaningful. It accepts that identity is destiny. It simply inverts the hierarchy. It says, you are right to think in racial categories. You just have the hierarchy wrong. This is not a correction. This is a reaction. This is the same prison flipped upside down. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, a Black American psychiatrist, argued that global white supremacy is actually a collective, subconscious defense mechanism. She theorized that because whiteness is a genetic recessive trait, white people suffer from an innate inferiority complex and a deep-seated fear of genetic annihilation through interracial reproduction. She claimed that racism, colonialism, and segregation were irrational, pathological behaviors driven by whites' biological desperation to survive against the numerically and genetically dominant Black race. This is pseudoscience. While lighter skin involves recessive genes, calling it a defect or inadequacy is a pseudoscientific value judgment. Her theory that white supremacy is an unconscious response to genetic recessiveness is a neo-Freudian interpretation with no empirical basis. There is no evidence that white people suffer from an innate inferiority complex. There is no evidence that racism is driven by a fear of genetic annihilation. But it accepts the premise. It accepts that race is real. It accepts that the categories are meaningful. It accepts that identity is destiny. It simply inverts the hierarchy. It says, you are right to think in racial categories. You just have the hierarchy wrong. This is not a correction. This is a reaction. This is the same prison flipped upside down. Dr. Leonard Jeffries, former chair of Black Studies at City College of New York, posited that human evolution produced two distinct psychological templates. He claimed that Black Sun people evolved in warm, cooperative environments, making them inherently communal, peaceful, and humanistic. Conversely, white ice people evolved in the harsh, barren climates of the Ice Age, forcing them to become cold, individualistic, predatory, and violently oppressive. This is pseudoscience. The claim that melanin makes Black people superior, some people, and whites inferior, ice people, has no scientific basis. No evidence supports that melanin grants supernatural powers or that climate determines inherent morality. Human behavior is shaped by culture, history, and individual choice, not by melanin levels. But it accepts the premise. It accepts that race is real. It accepts that the categories are meaningful. It accepts that identity is destiny. It simply inverts the hierarchy. It says, you are right to think in racial categories. You just have the hierarchy wrong. This is not a correction. This is a reaction. This is the same prison flipped upside down. A loose collective of Afrocentrists claim that melanin is not merely a pigment, but a superconductive chemical that acts as a spiritual antenna. Proponents argue that higher melanin levels grant Black people superior physical strength, heightened intuition, paranormal extrasensory perception, and a direct connection to the divine. Conversely, they label white people melanin deficient mutants or albinos, asserting that this deficit makes white people biologically prone to irrationality, violence, and spiritual emptiness. This is pseudoscience. Melanin is a biological pigmentation that protects against UV radiation. It does not grant ESP. It does not grant spiritual connections. It does not make anyone superior. These claims reify the false idea that race determines all human existence. They have been refuted by genetic and biochemical reviews. But it accepts the premise. It accepts that race is real. It accepts that the categories are meaningful. It accepts that identity is destiny. It simply inverts the hierarchy. It says, you are right to think in racial categories. You just have the hierarchy wrong. This is not a correction. This is a reaction. This is the same prison flipped upside down. Dr. Umar Johnson, a self-proclaimed clinical psychologist and Pan-Africanist speaker, aggressively synthesizes the ICE people in genetic recessive frameworks for modern social media audiences. He regularly labels white people crackers, ICE people, and genetic mutants, arguing that the lack of melanin is a biological defect that produces innate psychopathy, sadism, and a total lack of empathy. He has explicitly claimed that whiteness correlates with a genetic predisposition to pedophilia, greed, and global destruction. Additionally, he promotes the pseudoscientific claim that ADHD and learning disabilities are not real neurological conditions, but rather a white-created genocidal conspiracy to medicate and control Black children. This is pseudoscience. The claim that whiteness is a psychopathic mutation or that ADHD is a genocidal conspiracy has zero scientific backing. His credibility is also questionable, as his claimed doctorate is not from an accredited institution. There is no evidence that melanin deficiency correlates with psychopathy. There is no evidence that ADHD is a conspiracy. This is not science. This is rhetoric. This is propaganda. But it accepts the premise. It accepts that race is real. It accepts that the categories are meaningful. It accepts that identity is destiny. It simply inverts the hierarchy. It says, you are right to think in racial categories. You just have the hierarchy wrong. This is not a correction. This is a reaction. This is the same prison flipped upside down. Tariq Nasheed, filmmaker and social media influencer, promotes what critics call pseudo-history and anti-white pseudoscience through his Hidden Colors documentary series. The series claims that Black Africans founded all major ancient civilizations, including the Chinese and Aztec empires, and that Europeans are albinoid mutations who stole and inverted this original Black knowledge. Nasheed uses these claims to bolster his foundational Black American movement, arguing for cultural and genetic distinction from African immigrants. He has been banned from entering the UK, with authorities citing his anti-white rhetoric as a public concern. This is pseudoscience. The claim that Black Africans founded all major civilizations is pseudo-history and conspiracy theory. There is no evidence that foundational Black Americans are genetically distinct from other Black populations, nor that Europeans are albinoid mutations. Ancient civilizations were developed by people of many different backgrounds, often through diffusion and exchange. The idea that all civilization originated with one race is not history, it is a myth. But guess what? It accepts the premise. It accepts that race is real. It accepts that the categories are meaningful. It accepts that identity is destiny. It simply inverts the hierarchy. It says, you are right to think in racial categories. You just have the hierarchy wrong. This is not a correction. This is a reaction. This is the same prison flipped upside down. The eagle observes. The eagle sees the pattern. The Bordeaux essayists constructed a fiction to justify the slave trade. They claimed that blackness was a degeneration. They claimed that whiteness was the original human baseline. They claimed that the categories were real. They claimed that the hierarchy was natural. The modern counter-narratives construct a fiction to justify identity politics. They claim that whiteness is a genetic mutation. They claim that blackness is the original human baseline. They claim that the categories are real. They claim that the hierarchy is natural. Both sides are doing the exact same thing. Both sides are constructing a fiction. Both sides are accepting the premise that race is real. Both sides are trapped in the same prison. The Bordeaux essayists said, whites are superior because of melanin deficiency. The modern counter-narratives say, blacks are superior because of melanin superiority. Both are using the same flawed logic. Both are caught in the same fiction. The only difference is the direction of the hierarchy. The structure is identical. The premise is identical. The prison is identical. The eagle spots the target, the fiction itself. The fiction is the premise that race is real. The fiction is the premise that the categories are meaningful. The fiction is the premise that identity is destiny. The fiction is the premise that the state should classify citizens by skin color. The Bordeaux essayists accepted the fiction. The modern counter-narratives accept the fiction. The left accepts the fiction. The right accepts the fiction. The civil rights establishment accepts the fiction. The administrative state accepts the fiction. The census accepts the fiction. The media accepts the fiction. The academy accepts the fiction. Everyone accepts the fiction. Everyone is trapped in the same prison. The Bordeaux essayists constructed the prison. The modern counter-narratives reinforced the prison. The left uses the prison to demand remedies. The right uses the prison to oppose them. The civil rights establishment uses the prison to maintain its existence. The administrative state uses the prison to collect its data. The census uses the prison to sort its citizens. The media uses the prison to generate engagement. The academy uses the prison to produce research. Everyone is trapped. Everyone is profiting from the trap. Everyone is refusing to leave the trap. The eagle sees the target. The target is the fiction itself. The target is the optical delusion. The target is the Ponzi scheme. The target is the prison. Einstein called it an optical delusion. He wrote, "He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." The fiction of race is the optical delusion. It is the illusion that human beings are divided into discrete, biologically meaningful categories. It is the illusion that the color of your skin determines your character, your capacity, your destiny. It is the illusion that your neighbor of a different shade is your enemy. This delusion is a prison. It restricts us to our personal desires. It restricts us to affection for a few persons nearest to us. It prevents us from recognizing our common humanity. It prevents us from uniting against the common enemy, a system that extracts from all of us. The Bordeaux essayists constructed the prison. The modern counter-narratives reinforce the prison. The left uses the prison. The right uses the prison. Everyone is trapped. The only way out is to abandon the prison entirely. The only way out is abolition. The eagle folds its wings. The decision is made. The descent begins. The eagle has spotted the target. The eagle has seen the prison. The eagle has understood the optical delusion. The eagle has recognized the Ponzi scheme. The folding of the wings is the decision to act. It is the decision to abandon the comfort of the fiction for the clarity of the truth. It is the decision to refuse to check the box. It is the decision to demand the abolition of racial classification. It is the decision to join the coalition for Amendment 28. The folding of the wings is the execution order. The folding of the wings is the moment when the evidence is submitted. The folding of the wings is the moment when the path is mapped. The folding of the wings is the moment when the only question is whether we have the will to act. The eagle descends. The wind screams. The descent is joyful. The evidence is clear. The evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is undeniable. Race is not biologically real. The Human Genome Project has confirmed that 93% of human genetic variation exists within populations, not between them. There are no sharp breaks between groups. There are no natural borders. Race attempts to draw hard categorical lines on a continuous gradient. The gradient does not have lines. Race was invented. The modern concept of race was forged between 1758 and 1920 by identifiable architects: Linnaeus, Kant, Blumenbach, Morton, Gobineau, Grant, Stoddard. They have no evidence. They had no science. They had a project to justify the exploitation of millions. Race was codified. OMB Directive 15 was issued in 1977 to standardize racial categories across federal agencies. The authors admitted the categories were not intended to be based on anthropological or scientific grounds. The 1997 revision was driven by political pressure, not science. The 2024 revision added a MENA category, 27 years after it was first proposed. Race causes harm. The human toll is measurable. $450 million annually in compliance costs, 4,743 documented lynchings, a wealth gap of 7.4 to 1, an incarceration gap of 5 to 1, an infant mortality gap 2.3 to 1. The 1739 Bordeaux essays were not science. They were rationalizations. They were the intellectual architecture of a crime. They were the beginning of the optical delusion. They were the beginning of the prison. The modern counter-narratives are not corrections. They are reactions. They accept the same premise, that race is real, and simply invert the hierarchy. They are trapped in the same prison. The evidence is clear. The fiction is exposed. The Ponzi scheme is liquidated. The prison is open. The eagle descends with joyful clarity. The descent is not a fall. It is a flight. It is a flight toward clarity, towards justice, towards the fulfillment of the promise. It is a flight toward posterity. The eagle descends. The wind screams. The scream is joyful. The eagle descends because it has seen the truth. The eagle descends because it has understood the fiction. The eagle descends because it knows the way out. The eagle descends because it has seen the target. The target is the fiction itself. The Bordeaux essayists were absurd. They claimed blackness was caused by vapors, maternal imagination, darkened sperm, black bile, and climate staining the blood. They were wrong. They were not wrong because they were stupid. They were wrong because they were trying to justify atrocity. They were wrong because they were constructing a fiction to serve a purpose. The modern counter-narratives are absurd. They claim that whiteness is a psychopathic mutation, that melanin grants supernatural powers, that black Africans founded all civilization, and that ADHD is a conspiracy. They are wrong. They are not wrong because they are stupid. They are wrong because they are trying to reclaim what was stolen. They are wrong because they are constructing a fiction to serve a purpose. Both sides are absurd. Both sides are wrong. Both sides are trapped in the same prison. The eagle sees this. The eagle understands. The eagle knows the way out. The Constitution is colorblind. Justice Harlan declared in 1896, "Our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens." The Constitution does not ask about race. The Constitution does not classify by race. The Constitution does not allocate resources based on race. The Constitution requires equal protection. The Constitution demands that the government treat citizens as individuals, not as members of a racial class. The 14th Amendment promises equal protection. No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The 14th Amendment does not say equal protection for white people. It does not say equal protection for black people. It does not say equal protection for Asian people. It says equal protection for any person. The Caldwell Model fulfills the promise. The Caldwell Model prohibits the government from classifying citizens by race. It ensures that all citizens are treated as individuals, not as members of a racial class. It ends the discrimination that has been embedded in the law for centuries. It fulfills the promise of the Constitution. It fulfills the promise of the 14th Amendment. It fulfills the promise of the American experiment. The Caldwell Model is the bridge to justice. It provides permanent child allowances, universal pre-K, universal health care, geographically targeted investment, school funding equalization, affordable housing, justice reform, and land and capital justice. It does not ask about race. It asks about need. What do you need? Where do you live? How many children are in your household? Are you at risk of losing your land? Are you incarcerated or at risk of incarceration? Is your community being extracted from? It is not a tax increase. It is a reallocation. It takes the money we are already spending on the fiction and redirects it to what works. It is nearly revenue neutral. It is deflationary. It promotes unity. It demonstrates equality. It demonstrates justice for all. The Caldwell Model is the fulfillment of the promise. It is the end of the Ponzi scheme. It is the execution order. The eagle strikes. The eagle folds its wings. It dives. It descends with speed. It descends with force. It descends with precision. The wind screams. The scream is joyful. The scream is the sound of justice. The talons sink into the fiction. The talons are the evidence. The talons are the Constitution. The talons are the 14th Amendment. The talons are the Caldwell Model. The talons are Amendment 28. The talons are truth. The talons are justice. The talons are undiluted. Amendment 28 is the execution order. Section 1. No person shall be classified, categorized, identified, or treated by any federal, state, or local government entity on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, or any derivative thereof, for any purposes whatsoever. Section 2. All existing federal, state, and local laws, regulations, policies, forms, databases, and practices that classify, categorize, or identify persons by race, color, ethnicity, or any derivative thereof are hereby declared null and void, and shall be repealed, amended, or eliminated within 5 years of ratification. Section 3. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Section 4. Nothing in this article shall be construed to prohibit any federally recognized Indian tribe from determining its own citizenship, enrollment, or membership criteria in accordance with its sovereignty, authority, treaty rights, and the unique political relationship between such tribes in the United States. Amendment 28 is the execution order. It is the end of the fiction. It is the end of the Ponzi scheme. It is the end of the optical delusion. It is the end of the prison. The eagle strikes. The talons sink. The fiction is exposed. The Ponzi scheme is liquidated. The optical delusion is shattered. The prison is open. The 1739 Bordeaux essayists are dead. The architects of the fiction are dead. The modern counter-narratives are exposed. The left and the right are trapped in the same prison. The civil rights establishment is trapped. The administrative state is trapped. The census is trapped. The media is trapped. The academy is trapped. Everyone is trapped. Everyone is profiting from the trap. Everyone is refusing to leave the trap. But the eagle has struck. The talons have sunk. The trap is open. The prison is open. The way out is clear. Citizens of the United States, The time has come. The time has come to let go of the past. The time has come to choose. The time has come to choose the fiction or the truth. The time has come to choose division or unity. The time has come to choose extraction or justice. The time has come to choose the prison or the freedom. The Bordeaux essayists chose the fiction. They constructed a lie to justify atrocity. They built the prison. The modern counter-narratives chose the fiction. They construct a lie to reclaim identity. They reinforce the prison. The left chooses the fiction. It uses the prison to demand remedies. It reinforces the prison. The right chooses the fiction. It uses the prison to oppose remedies. It reinforces the prison. Everyone chooses the fiction. Everyone is trapped in the prison. Everyone is refusing to leave. But you do not have to choose the fiction. You can choose the truth. You can choose unity. You can choose justice. You can choose freedom. You can choose the Caldwell Model. You can choose Amendment 28. You can choose to fly. The evidence is submitted. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. The evidence is the Bordeaux essays. The evidence is the modern counter-narratives. The evidence is the scientific consensus. The evidence is the historical record. The evidence is the administrative codification. The evidence is the clinical harm. The evidence is the economic cost. The evidence is the constitutional promise. The evidence is clear. The evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is undeniable. The evidence is submitted. The path is the Caldwell Model. The path is Amendment 28. The path is the 5-year transition. The path is the abolition of racial classification. The path is the fulfillment of the promise. The path is clear. The path is feasible. The path is affordable. The path is constitutional. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. Will you choose the fiction or the truth? Will you choose division or unity? Will you choose extraction or justice? Will you choose the prison or the freedom? Will you fly? Citizens of the United States, the eagle has flown. The eagle has climbed. The eagle has observed. The eagle has spotted. The eagle has folded its wings. The eagle has descended. The eagle has struck. The fiction is exposed. The Ponzi scheme is liquidated. The optical delusion is shattered. The prison is open. The evidence is submitted. The path is mapped. The only question is whether we have the will to act. I ask you to join the coalition for Amendment 28. I ask you to refuse the checkbox. I ask you to choose the truth. I ask you to choose unity. I ask you to choose justice. I ask you to choose freedom. I ask you to fly. I await your verdict.